I'd like to invite on stage Jason Rowe from ParkYa. He will do a short overview on the startup trends in open data. And Jason is from Ireland.
Hello, can everyone hear me, yeah? So my name is Jason Rowe. I come from a startup based in Ireland. We developed a parking application based on open data that was released by the government. The trend in Ireland is that there's a lot of location-based data that's being released, points of interest and information like that. We don't have a huge amount of live streaming data yet, but that's growing over time. So just a little bit about myself. My background is a developer. I've been a developer for about 8 years. I'm an advocate for open data, bar camps and co-working. And I've been married about 14 days. It's been a pretty intense ride coming here at the moment. So if you want a really extreme ride, start an open data startup, get onto a startup accelerator, and have a wedding within a very short period of time. My advice is try not to do that. So in terms of, it applies to open data projects, but my own background was back in 2009, I had a run-in with a national airline called Ryanair. Some people may have seen it, some people may have not, but I found a problem within their booking system whereby you could book flights for free. And I communicated that in a very social media way. And the reason I bring this up because as with that situation, open data startups have the same window of opportunity. That story was picked up and was presented on CNN, Financial Times, Wired magazine, that kind of stuff. In the same way, open data can be a flash in the pan. So you have to use the time when you launch quite wisely because it would just be another kind of thing that just comes along. In terms of the constraints that you have with an open data project, most of the data the governments have are very locked in. And it's not intentional from what we've seen. It's actually just they don't know how to get it out. They really just don't know how to get the data that an open data startup would need and be able to stream it in a very proactive way and being able to maintain it over time. What we found is by going into government and actually engaging with them and embracing kind of their ways and understanding what they expect, it can be an eye-opening experience because you start to understand their constraints. Many things which you think make a lot of sense, as in maybe you need less people to do certain things, or maybe the resources aren't allocated quite correctly, are no-go areas. So my advice would be try and stay away from anything that intimidates or provokes government, but at the same time try and understand what their requirements are and what their own brief is within their departments. So in terms of our own start, we came out of an initiative run by Dublin City and the NDRC, which is a startup incubator, and Microsoft, and it was an open innovation session. So what that meant was they invited large groups of people into a very public place and said, here are a number of data sets that are not released yet. We want to know what you guys can do with those. We want you to present ideas and pitch those to us. The challenge you have with that kind of environment is typically people cluster together. They form around particular ideas, and the ideas don't always go very far. What I found was I separated myself out from the group and said I was one person working on one idea against 15 people working on their own ideas. And what I found was that out of those groups, only 3 of them actually went through, and we're the only one that kept going afterwards. So my suggestion would be it's much better to go out and crowdsource the ideas and assemble groups around ideas rather than do a closed room, because once people leave the room, that can be the end of the momentum. So to keep it going, a crowdsourced way is a much better way to go. In terms of trends, the reason we went and started looking at parking was this image kind of illustrates it. This is a street in Dublin, and it's the interesting thing. It's on a main shopping street, about 5 meters back from where that photo was taken. There's a very large car park, and the reason this problem happens is because at 4 p.m. every day, that street is no longer, you can't park there anymore. And in terms of data and how you pay for your parking, there's no way to tell you that that's going to run out at 4 p.m. But this happens pretty much every day, and that's the photo you see. So I think there's a big opportunity around the location-aware service, so that they know services that know where you are, and they know the context of what's about to happen later on in the day, or what could happen in the future. And then that can inform a decision around whether a consumer parks in a particular area, or decides to do something else, as the case may be. So other examples would be in the energy sector. So there's OpenAI is an organization, or it's a group that kind of came together, mainly in the US. They focus on energy-based open data. And this is a great example. Simple Energy, what they did was they took a number of open data services from the US. What they kind of combined it with crowdsourced data, and then they created this application that helps reduce demand on energy usage it's like an opt-in. They've kind of gamified the energy usage. Why this is an interesting piece and why it's a big problem, if you're familiar with the energy sector, there's a big problem around peak demand. So particular times of the days when people arrive home and turn all their utilities on, TVs on, all that kind of stuff, there's a huge peak. And depends on the infrastructure that's in place. That can cost a lot of money because more power stations have to turn on to be able to cope with that load. So the idea here was that they wanted to help reduce that curve, and they're doing it through a social way. The other interesting space, we're starting to see this in Ireland. It's a difficult space to get into, but healthcare. The big trend in the US for a long time has been, can I go to my doctor and can I get all my medical records, take it off them, and then move to another doctor and give them all my medical records there. If you wanted to move between providers in healthcare, it's very difficult. And there's a lot of opportunities both around your own personal data, but crowdsourced data on information about drug effectiveness, about disease, about different areas, water, pollution, all that kind of stuff tied in. When you start stitching data together, that's a very interesting space. The other kind of interesting piece is around open corporates, and it's all about open company structures and how companies are related to each other. Open corporates set up, and I think they have about 55 million, I think, was the last count, companies from around Europe. I think they have the US as well. Really interesting space because you can actually start polling that information if it's your own startup, and you can start stitching some of that together with other data that you have. But that starts revealing really interesting trends about who owns what percentage, what relationship companies have. And how you commercialize that is up to yourself, but there's a lot of potential around business intelligence and sales and stuff like that. The other kind of interesting trend is around open patent data. And this is a fascinating space because there are over 80 million patents available. If you go out and start mining that information in terms of open data, that opens a whole world of opportunities, both in terms of profiling what's about to happen next, what things you could be working on, which things just not to work on at all because there's too many patents. And from both an academic point of view and a commercial point of view, it can be a great way to mine useful information in that sense. I guess what binds a lot of this together revolves around the process of getting the data out there. And what we found is that the structures, when they develop naturally within a government, they tend to be very rigid, and they tend not to know how to release information. What the Open Government Partnership did, and we've started to embrace in Ireland, Lithuania has also embraced it, is you have to agree to a 10-point plan, like you agree a certain amount of things that have to happen, and a time frame for those things to happen. The interesting thing about that is that, you know, of the 47 countries that have made that commitment, most of those guys have actually achieved a huge amount on that process. So giving a roadmap for government is definitely the way to go. And if you can embrace and be part of that, that's a huge piece. I'm almost ready to wrap up, but this is something very close to my heart. It's the Code for America kind of idea in itself. I think it has a huge amount of potential for open data and for open data startups. The idea is that you get very talented developers, engineers, you know, UX designers. You get a scholarship for them in a sense that their salary is paid for, and you place them very much embedded within government. And you basically say, this is your role within government. These are the things you want to go in there. The idea is that you almost disrupt from within, and the person can't get fired because they're already, you know, they've been paid for a year. So it's something that can be quite beneficial to mix things up. So that's me, Jason Rowe. My company is called ParkYa. If you want to find out any more information, check out parkya.com. And any questions? Okay.
Does anyone have a question? Thanks, Jason.